Welcome to MilSpouse Matters, the podcast dedicated to encouraging military spouses. Need some inspiration as you navigate military life, moves, deployments, raising military kids, keeping your marriage together, career issues, and more? Get an encouraging, humorous outlook from a spouse who's been there for 30 years. Join host Jen McDonald, author of You Are Not Alone, Encouragement for the Heart of a Military Spouse, who knows that we're stronger together. Jen also writes regularly for outlets such as Military Spouse Magazine and has been featured in numerous books and national publications. Grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and sit back and relax as Jen talks with military spouses both new and experienced who will give you realistic hope and support for your own MilSpouse journey.
Hey guys, and welcome to episode 23 of MilSpouse Matters. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I know I always say that, but it's really true. I just thank you for taking your time to come and join up with me here on the podcast. So a couple little things before I jump into the talk with Judy Davis, which is going to be awesome. So I don't want to take too much time, but she is doing a giveaway. We're having a lot of those lately, of 2 self-care packs for parents. And that will also include her books, Warning Signs and Right Side Up. And you'll hear more about that in our conversation. But the way to enter that is going to be just go to the MilSpouse Matters Instagram. So you can enter the giveaway there. And that will be 2 listeners will be winning those self-care packs. So that's incredibly generous of her. And I wish you good luck. And I wanted to give a shout out to those of you that have left reviews. I figure I'll do a couple of these a week. So thank you for taking your time to leave a review. Sarting says, Jen is so relatable and down to earth. She's a great host and always so helpful with each topic she addresses. Thank you for that. And Christine says, my new favorite podcast. As a retired spouse, it's hard to find stories that I can relate to. One episode may have you tearing up and another laughing until your stomach hurts. So I really appreciate y'all taking the time to leave ratings and reviews. Those were on iTunes. And so whatever podcast app or player you're using, if you take a moment to just even leave a star rating, especially if you like it. If you don't, just feel free to skip this part. But if you like the show and leave a good rating, it actually helps it get in front of more listeners and more people that are looking for this sort of content. I also wanted to mention some of the notes I've gotten on social media. They'd really just make my day. If you like something in the show or have a question, do feel free to just drop me a line. Rebecca said, she was talking about Claire Wood's episode about finding community. That episode was really uplifting for me and came at just the time I needed it. Megan said, loved this episode. And then I got a note from Jenny that says, I just got home from a 10-hour drive with my 2 kiddos and 2 dogs. I listened to several of your podcasts during the drive, and it really inspired me to change my mindset. And she went on to say that she had been in the military and was very headstrong and independent, which, you know, we kind of all are, but that she didn't really know how to be a supportive spouse. So that means a lot to me, that something that I've just put out there could be meaningful to you. And so hearing from you guys really not just makes my day, but my week and my month. And I'm not overstating that. In fact, I was sitting the other day and putting together some things for this upcoming next few weeks. It's April. It's the month of the military child. So we'll be doing some content about raising military kids and helping them through some of the challenges. And I thought, you know, it's kind of crazy. My husband will have been retired from the Air Force this spring for almost 2 years. And as if you've been listening to the show, you know that my oldest son is also active duty. But I thought, you know, I could take a break. You know, why do I keep doing this was kind of my thought. And my eyes welled up with tears as I thought of all you great military families, of my own family, all the sacrifices our kids have made. And I thought, you know what? You all just have my heart. I can't help myself. I love this life. I love the military community. And that's why I keep doing what I do. And I really do hope that if anything I do helps you, I'm very humbled and I'm just so grateful. So love you guys. All that to say, hang on, because Judy Davis is an incredible guest and you're going to just, I think, be so encouraged and helped by what she's sharing in this episode. Thanks for listening, guys. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode. I am so excited to be talking to Judy Davis, also known as the Direction Diva. She's a sought-after motivational speaker, entrepreneur, author, and host of the Mighty Parenting podcast. She's an expert on parenting, stress relief, and teen suicide prevention, as well as an influencer in the military spouse community. She is passionate about providing programs and resources to families across the nation and is the CEO of DASIUM, a brand leading the way in depression, addiction, and suicide prevention in teens and young adults. She's the author of the books Warning Signs, A Parent's Guide to Discover If Your Teen is at Risk, and Right Side Up, Find Your Way Through Military Life. You can find Judy at her site, thedirectiondiva.com, on Instagram as The Direction Diva, on Facebook at Mighty Parenting, and a private Facebook group, Mighty Parenting. So you're in lots of places. So welcome, Judy, after that very impressive resume.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate coming on and talking to your listeners today. I love what you're doing, Jen. It is so necessary, and it's providing such great support for spouses.
Oh, I hope so. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me because I feel like you're like the queen of military spouse support. You're so awesome.
Probably because I just screw up so often. So my life experience helps out.
Relatable, definitely relatable. Well, tell us a little bit about your story of coming into military life because you kind of have a unique background.
Yeah, I never dreamed of being a military spouse. My dad was in for a couple of years in the Air Force back in the day, but I was never a military brat. I really never wanted to be a military spouse, if I'm just going to put it out there. And I met my husband when he got out the first time back in the late 80s. And when the first original Desert Storm conflict came up, he was asked to go back in. And so I just dated
you met him after he'd already gotten out,
right?
What you're saying.
So he was still in ready reserves, and when they called him to come back in, he said, "I really want to go." And I said, "That's cool, but you're going to go without me because I don't want to do this life and raise children in it. And I'm good with it. Go, but we'll go our separate ways." Well, he didn't go back in, and we got married. And each conflict that came year after year and over the time, you could see he should have never gotten out. He's an Army guy through and through. And after a 19-year break in service, he left the executive position in corporate America to come back in as a combat engineer in the Army. So,
wow. Okay, so I'm going to tell you this. I didn't realize this. My son is a civil engineer in the Air Force and just got back from his first deployment. So,
wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
You have it from all ends. You have it from all ends.
Oh, I know. Well, 19 years, that is a long time. Yeah. Like, how do you, I just can't even fathom making that decision, like, after that much time has passed.
Well, he really was finding that his position, he worked for one of the big 3 automotive companies, and he was never around. And he just felt like he was being a cruddy dad. He was being a horrible husband and just missing out on what he really was drawn to do. And he's someone who, from the time he was little, was pulled to serve. He just, let life get in the way and me get in the way, I guess. If I'm just putting out there. But, when he came back in, you could tell that this is the place he was supposed to be. He is very, he loves working with soldiers. He came back in as enlisted on purpose because he wanted to be in the nitty gritty with the soldiers, training them, helping them, supporting them, and teaching them what he wished he knew when he first got in the first time. So,
well, how was that for you? Because you already kind of had a life set.
It was.
I'm assuming.
It was crazy. Not going to lie. It is really hard after the newness of, Army stickers and excitement about going through the gates wore off. I found myself lost. Really not knowing how to handle this life. I had no idea that being a spouse would take so much, not just from me, but my kids and my family. And it changed everything. And I just was not prepared for that. I just thought it was like any other job. He was just going to a different job. And it was really hard for me in those first couple of years. Boy, oh boy, did it was the comedy of errors. I'm not gonna, and that's Right Side Up came from a lot of the mistakes I made when I wrote that book. It was gosh, if I just did this, maybe someone else is feeling the same way as I did. And I had just started writing my blog originally, just talking about the stuff that was going on and how I was handling it and all the things that I screwed up. And then was lucky enough to have someone say, hey, let's turn this into a book. You might, there's
That's
people
really
out there
cool.
that need it. So that's how it all started. I mean, I never had the intention, you talk to different people. I never had the intention to be a blogger or a thing. I always have been a motivational speaker. I did a lot of entrepreneur events and things, owning my own business. I've always been an entrepreneur, but I did everything in the entrepreneur space when we lived in Michigan. Everything had to change because I couldn't do that at our first duty station because I wasn't bilingual and we were stationed at Fort Bliss. So
okay,
it made it really hard.
Which, if you don't know, it's on the border of Texas and Mexico. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So a couple things just stuck to me. One was I did hear you speak at was it the Military Influencer Conference last year or the year before?
Year before, probably.
Yeah. So if you have a chance to hear Judy, she's amazing, great speaker, very engaging. And I love how real you are. And I think that's so needed. And what you're doing is amazing.
Thank you.
The other thing I was going to, thinking about, and I've heard this recently from some younger spouses, which I love you younger spouses, but sometimes you think, okay, this is not going to affect me. I am so much more than a military spouse. And yes, you are. Absolutely. I think sometimes we can underestimate the impact military life is going to have on us because it isn't just a job, like you said. So maybe speak to that a little bit. What you said, it surprised you how much it would affect you and your children. Elaborate on that a little bit.
Well, the thing that shocked me, it was easy to get the logistics down. And I think for a lot of us, that's the case. I could figure out how to get from point A to point B and get everyone where they needed to be and handle the finances and all the nitty gritty of TRICARE. I could figure out the logistics. The part that punched me in the gut was the emotional side of military life.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we give any of us enough credit for how difficult that can be.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. And you look at those charts that say, okay, if you've been through these certain stressors, your level of stress is very high. And you look at that sometimes as a military family and you go, your spouse has been in danger. You've moved across the world. Your kids have been transplanted. Yes. Check. And it's kind of a testament, the fortitude of military spouses, that we manage to string together a sensible sentence sometimes,
Oh, for sure. And it's really interesting because, we kind of giggle and we say, check. But the reality is we dismiss it and we go, this is our life, putting on the big girl panties and everything else, this is just it. And I just have to deal. And we make sure to deal with everything for our kids, everything for the household, everything for the spouses. I mean, yes, we take on all of it and we don't take care of ourselves. That is, without exception, the biggest thing. And we think we are because we go and do a little bit of self-care. We think that, a night out with the girls is going to do one thing, or one little moment, 1 hour of taking a break is going to refill our battery. The reality is we're not even getting to 1% of our battery.
Yeah.
And that was
and
the
then
thing.
How are you supposed to take care of your kids?
And you can't.
Emotional health,
Right. And you can't. And
if you're not even.
Right. But what else happens is then your health, physical health, declines. And when your physical health declines, then you are opening yourselves up to so much more stress, because not only now do you have the stuff going on in your head, but physically you can't do the things you need to do to keep your household running.
And it does fall on the spouse much of the time, just because of the demands of the military. I mean, it just is what it is. And I think too, one of the things that happens is when we joke about it, which you gotta laugh or you're gonna cry kind of thing. But when we dismiss it and just say put your big girl panties on, when younger spouses are struggling, they see that and they don't want to reach out, Or I've seen even like in social media where they could just get beaten down by asking a simple question. And I would love for, I don't think that's the way it is everywhere, but there's enough of it that makes sometimes an inexperienced spouse not want to ask for
Or
help.
disengage from any of the support resources. I see that happening all the time. They'll go to some kind of a group thing or a FRG meeting like we have in the Army, or any of the support services, and they get there and they ask a question and people are like, you don't know how to do that? I mean, I did that 5 years ago, and we're just not.
And so what?
Exactly.
But you were new once too, right?
Exactly. And it's like, in some ways, we have such a strong community, and in other ways, we literally can beat each other up harder than I have ever seen. So that's, I think that's why podcasts like this, just kind of talking about everything and saying it's okay if things aren't perfect. It's okay if you're having difficulty. It's okay if your teenager is just off the rails. None of it matters in this very moment. Let's just take care of what we can do next, because there's different things that are going to happen in our careers as military spouses that we aren't prepared for. And it may be something that isn't even anything to do with the military side of our life. Could be mom, dad, sister, brother, anything like that. There's all these things coming at you. And we have to take care of ourselves so we can parent our kids, and we can be and find joy in our lives. I think that's missing in the lives of many spouses. They're feeling lost. They're feeling like they don't have connection. They don't have anything except Facebook, which is toxic.
It's a two-edged sword. Yep. I've gone back and forth. I'm like, I hate social media. And then you move somewhere where you're in another country and like, thank God for social media. Because so you can share photos of your kids with all the extended family and keep up with everybody. And it's a love-hate thing. You've got to have in real life people. I say that all the time. If you've been listening a while, you're probably sick of me saying that, but you do. You have to have an in real life battle buddy. You just do. Well, and so speaking of parenting military kids, I think a lot of advice is geared towards the little ones. And I don't know how old were yours when your husband went back
Sophomore and junior in high school.
Yes, oh my goodness. So they were just thrown into it. Oh, wow. So then you definitely know some of the struggles that they go through. Teenagehood is already challenging. And my oldest son, we moved every year of his high school years, except, we moved every year. And I just would apologize. And he did okay. He's the one that went into the Air Force. So apparently
he embraced it.
He's okay with it. We were surprised, actually. But when we talk about teenagers and they're going through a move or a parent deploying, let's just talk about some general guidelines maybe to help them through that. And then maybe we can go to some specific scenarios, Judy.
Well, one of the things that I always like to say when we're talking in generalities is the best way to begin a healthy parenting in the teenage years is to understand that really and truly, we don't get the challenges our kids are facing today. We haven't lived through them. We learn how to parent from our parents and mentors and significant adults in our lives as we're growing up. We see what they did and we either choose to do what they did or we choose to do exactly opposite or somewhere in the middle, right? And we're the first generation that is parenting through technology. That is tough and it's significant. Add on the pressures that our kids are feeling because competition is so much more in a global and broader scale. Back in the day, your competition was the kids you played Little League with all the way through.
Right.
Now, to get into college, you're competing against 30 to 40 times more people for the same number of slots. So there's all these pressures that the kids are feeling that while we might understand to an extent because we hear the words they're saying, we can't understand how they are actually feeling about it because we can't relate our own personal experience. So that, just in general.
Or just the fact that if you have an outfit like that you think is cute, who did you use to compare yourself to? People you saw in person. Now it's everybody on social media and
Exactly. And all the styles are supposed to be, the Jimmy Choo shoes and the this and the this and this. And I don't know about you guys, but enlisted military, we can't afford Jimmy Choo's. So just the way it is. But
they make my feet hurt just looking at them
I
anyway.
know, right? Oh my gosh. But I think in general, when we're talking about helping our kids, we really have to talk about the emotional health and why that's so important. Because if they have strategies that they can use that are keeping them emotionally healthy, anything that comes up, they'll be able to tackle. I liken it to kind of like a car. Think of it like a car because you need 3 different types of strategies to take care of your car, right? You need to do some things on a regular basis, like putting gas in the car, fluids on the reservoirs, air in the tires. And if you don't do those things regularly, you can end up not being able to drive at all. So it's important for our kids to do, and us to do, those regular things that help us keep running effectively. That's the first thing. That's a foundational strategy that everybody needs. Eat well. And I'm not saying don't have your wine in the evening or eat cereal for breakfast.
Well, not the kids.
I'm not saying that because I'd be a hypocrite if I was. But if you don't do the regular things that help you feel good, like a little bit of exercise, drinking enough water, and being in person with people, like you said, to do that, then you can't function and your kids can't function. So making sure that that's something you do together. And then the second thing is you need trigger strategies. And those are strategies to use when something goes wrong in a specific moment. So back to the car analogy, if you get a flat tire or all of a sudden the temperature gauge goes crazy and there's, smoke spewing out of your front end, you need strategies that in that moment will decrease the kid's stress level. And they need to know what to do. And that all starts from having those conversations. And then, you have the crisis strategies when things get overwhelming and unmanageable. And that's when you might need to bring in some professional help.
Yeah.
When you're talking about kids, it's really and truly the best way to help is to give them these 3 types of strategies, the foundational, trigger, and crisis strategies, and then open up a line of conversation where you're actually listening to what's going on in their life.
I think that's key right there because our 4 quote kids are all over 20 now. And we've had so many people just ask us, how did you do it? How did they end up so great or functioning? I'm like, well, first of all, you didn't see all the
bumps along the way,
messy stuff. But obviously we're not perfect, but that was always the big thing. You can talk to me about anything. Nothing is taboo. You can come and tell me. And I've had my kids confide in me things that were happening with other friends and they knew they needed to tell somebody. I'm just so grateful that they felt safe telling us. One thing I was going to mention when you're talking about the crisis strategy, sometimes as parents, we don't know who to reach out to, or we feel embarrassed that we might need help. And it doesn't have to necessarily be, we're going to counseling. You can go to your chaplain. We've done that. We had one situation with my husband's last deployment. My youngest had a lot of anxiety about it. She was about, I got to think what year it was, 10. And she was having a lot of trouble sleeping. So she just knew if she woke up and needed to come get into my bed, she could. And she did. And she did most nights. But then we had a really dear friend of ours die suddenly. So you already have your dad is in Afghanistan for a year, and then somebody important in your life, this was another male figure that lived on base, died. And she was pretty much a mess. I took her to speak to the chaplain, but the other thing I did, it was one night she was just having a really bad night, and we had a neighbor that we were really close to, and I called them. This may make me sound crazy, but I said, can we just come over and could she just sit with you for a minute? She just needs to be around like a dad figure. And of course they said yes. They were fellow military. So we walked over and we just sat on the couch and she leaned on him and he put his arm around her and she just cried for a while. And because I didn't know what else to do in that moment. I was just, let me just say, we're just winging it, right? So sometimes you just have to look around you. What are your resources? If your child isn't wanting to go talk to a stranger, because that can be intimidating. And maybe you can speak to that too, like how, if they do need to go to counseling, how to ease them into it. And I think if those things hadn't worked, I would have sought other resources, but we were able to kind of work within our little community and friend and chapel group, and which seemed like she did okay
Exactly.
with that.
And I think, the best way, if you notice that your child is at a place where you've talked to them stuff, but you know that they're keeping a lot of things bottled in for whatever reason. I mean, our kids are so resilient, but they are also experts at putting a mask on and pretending everything's okay. I saw it with both of my kids. They wanted to make sure that they didn't put any extra stuff whenever dad was deployed or gone for a long period of time. They didn't want to put any extra thing on my plate. So they become very good at pretending everything's okay when it's not. And I know that as spouses, we often, when something is triggered, an event triggers, like you just shared about the passing of your neighbor. When something like that happens, adults often go into logistics mode because there's a lot of things that need to be done. And we forget to check in to the emotional side of what's going on with our kids. If they're going from A to B to C, it's okay. And you did perfect. You relied on your community. And that's what we need. It takes a village to raise teenagers because, you can be the most open parent and have great conversation and be an awesome listener, which is so key in those teen and young adult years. Oftentimes they don't need you to fix it anymore. And we have to shift over into the passenger seat and be a guide as opposed to the person that knows the way it has to be done.
And be okay with them having other significant adult figures in their life. I think that's important too, whether it's coaches or teachers. My boys, I will call them boys forever. I don't know. I'm sure you do this with your kids. They're like 28 and 25 now, but they had a really great youth leader during that time. And I was so thankful because my husband was deployed our oldest senior year. And I didn't plan for that. That wasn't supposed to happen. He was gone from July to July. He missed everything. And I was so grateful that their youth leader really stepped up and they did a lot with him because that took some pressure off of me because I don't get all the boy stuff, right?
For sure. And we can't, one thing, to every spouse listening is we can't be everything to everybody and be okay with ourselves. We can't be 100% mom, 100% entrepreneur, 100%, worker, 100% wife. We can't be 100% across the board. We've got to learn to find, I keep saying find that balance, but it's okay to say, I can't do all of this and I need help. We as a country and as a society have become very worried about judgment and what other people are going to assume we're doing because of whatever. Social media, I think that's one of the things it's done that's hurt us, is it's made us very acutely aware that what's happening in our lives could all of a sudden be blasted out for the whole world to judge.
Oh, isn't that the truth?
We've got to start, if someone confides in you, we've got to start keeping it to ourselves and stepping in where it makes sense, especially with our kids.
Well, I was going to say, like, okay, so if you're in the middle of a deployment or something hard, you're kind of expecting them to struggle and have issues. So even if it's not a stressful situation like that, I think some of us know typical warning signs, like if a kid's not doing well, but are there things that we can be looking for to help them that we may just not be aware of because, we haven't been teenagers in a while? And you're kind of the expert. So tell us, what can we look for?
Right. And I wish there was a perfect one size fits all answer. I always wanted, before my son was in crisis, and, for those of you that don't know, my son attempted suicide in his sophomore year of college. And before he was in crisis, I wished, that's how come I wrote warning signs, because there was all these little things that over the year and a half before that were there, but I just dismissed them all as typical signs of, typical teen behavior.
You just
Right,
didn't know, right?
exactly. And like I said, he was really good about hiding. So to answer your question, it's not the big stuff that's going to clue you in to something major going on. The blow up here, the blow up there, that might just be them blowing off steam. What I always encourage people is to look for the small changes that happen over time and just notice the little things. I mean, it can be a physical thing like extreme or unusual fatigue. Teens are always tired because they're staying up late playing their games or have their phones and things like that. But
yeah, people are going to be like, how am I supposed to know?
Exactly. But it's like if they have those coupled with other things, that's what I'm saying. It's almost like you want to start a data file in your head. It's like, this is going on. Are they losing or gaining weight? Are they getting sick all the time? Are they dressing differently? Those would be physical things. Then you've got your behavioral or emotional things like, are they negative all the time? Do they have lack of interest in the things that used to bring them joy? Do they just want to be in their own room and be away? Are they isolating themselves? Are things happening at school that are just so out of character? Or are they coming home later and later or missing the bus regularly? Those are little things that can say something's wrong. And one that I never even kind of wasn't on my radar was the refusal to be accountable for what they did. That was one that was a shock to me when I, dug in and started looking at the behavior patterns. Because when I got that call, I was like, instantly, what did I do wrong? What did I miss?
And why do you think that is? Do you think it's because they're like, what does it matter anyway? I'm not going to be here, so it doesn't matter.
It's more
do you think that's what that stems from?
They can't see that things can get better. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So often our kids, something happens and it might be something like, let's just say, with videos, they trip in the lunchroom and someone catches it on video and then all of a sudden it goes viral, right? And next thing you know, they have this whole huge thing going on where people are laughing at them and whatever. And they don't tell us about it. But then all of a sudden, slowly their behaviors start to change. They start dressing a little bit more like, put a hoodie on or hide. They do that, or they switch. The friends that they'd always been hanging out with now don't want to be their friend. And so there's all these little things. And what happens is our kids believe that they're supposed to handle it. They're now not babies anymore.
Yeah.
And they think that they should be able to handle whatever comes. Where we can step in as parents is to create an environment that is, I think of it like a circle. Create this circle of safety that they can go out of, but know that they can come back in when they need help. And just always have that in and out going on. Take the time to check in. And I don't mean just go, so how was your day? And put them on the spot. Do an activity with them. I know I learned more about what was going on with my son when we would be doing something like raking together or cleaning out the car together. Boys, especially, cannot sit down and have a one-on-one, and they're not going to reveal all the stuff, all the layers, They're just not. They need to be active and moving. And so sometimes a walk or a drive in a car is the perfect way to check in.
One of my friends that's a mom of 3 boys says those are the best times to talk because they don't have to look at you in the eyes. It's the facing, she calls them facing forward talks. Like you're either walking or doing like riding your bikes or in the car, and they will open up like nobody's business because they don't feel as threatened.
And they'll open up as long as you listen. That's the key.
You can't be trying to solve it for them necessarily.
Exactly. Right on, Jen.
Well, I'm so sorry that happened to your son and to you. And I think I didn't tell you this. My husband's brother killed himself when they were teenagers. And I know, and I didn't know him then, but I know looking back, like his parents could say, okay, this and happened. And why didn't we see it? It sounds like you kind of did the same thing. How did I not know?
Right.
So I think the little things you mentioned are so helpful because, I mean, you can only do what you can do. I don't know. There's so much guilt involved, I think.
There is. And this isn't for every situation, but when your kid is in crisis, especially when there is a mental or behavior health. So if it's, they have serious anxiety, depression, addiction, suicide ideology, any of these major things, eating disorders, all of those self-harm behaviors, all of those are ways that our kids are trying to feel something. They've really and truly disconnected from their ability to feel in reality. They assume that things will never get better and they punish themselves in different ways, trying to feel because they really can't see that life can get better. So they take drastic measures to just try and cope. They're unhealthy coping strategies when they turn to these things, and all they are is warning signs that are coming up, opportunity for us as parents to step up our game and learn new things and end the stigma. I am a firm believer that we can't handle everything ourselves.
Yeah.
And we do our kids, and especially our teens, a disservice in trying. So if they're struggling, let's find them someone that they can talk to. And it might be a clergy member. It might be, like you said, a great mentor. It might be a therapist. It might be a doctor, because oftentimes teenage years are when medically some of these disabilities show up. Some of these mental and behavioral health issues come to light, So it's really important that we don't just think it's something we've done or something we haven't done.
Right.
Get curious and start digging in, find every clue and solve the mystery of what's going on with your kids.
Well, what are some resources for military parents, especially, that you would recommend? I mean, we talked about chaplains and youth groups and things like that, but is there anything else that you recommend?
Not to toot my own horn, but Mighty Parenting is a huge resource for this. We started the podcast to answer a lot of these questions, and every single week we interview experts and talk about topics that you need. And in that community, we also have a private Facebook group. We saw such a shift when our kids are little. They have tons of support. You're sitting at the park and talking about kids' behavior, and everyone figures out how to help with potty training, right? And helping with anything going on. They get to the teen years and you say, gosh, my kid has been coming home and he's been drinking every weekend and I don't know what to do. They all of a sudden step back. Oh, my kid can't hang out with him.
Yeah.
And they pull away. So we lose our support system as they get older. Yeah. So you might need to go into therapy. And with the military, in addition to the Mighty Parenting stuff, we have a private group that they can go and ask questions. But giveanhour.org is fantastic.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, anyone can go and call and either do it right online to sign up, and you get like 10 free sessions. No one will know about it or anything like that. And they can just talk to someone, or you as the parent can talk to a therapist to learn healthy coping strategies for working with and helping your teen.
Now, is that sort of like the military family life counselors? Is that program still running?
It's totally two different things.
Okay.
Military life, the counselors, that would be another resource that is great. And they're usually on your base or at your installation.
And that's anonymous as well, correct? Yeah.
Exactly. It is. And you can do that. But Give an Hour is one that literally you can do in the privacy of your home.
Okay. So you don't have to go meet somebody.
Yeah. So it's really great because a lot of times the kids don't want to go and talk to someone one-on-one right away.
Right.
But so Give an Hour would be a great way for them to kind of just tread lightly into the therapy side of things and professional help. And then there's another one, online therapy. It's called breakthrough.com. And that has one. That one, I think there is some fees and things like that, but it's one, if you wanted to have something separate from the military, and I know a lot of people do.
Yeah.
That's another online. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world.
Right. That's important. Oh, thank you for those. Those are, there's no reason to try to figure this out alone. If you kind of reach the end of your rope and you just don't know what else to do, or you're seeing some things, please reach out. Please, please, please. Like Judy said, she has a Facebook group, and your book, the warning signs book is written for this, correct?
Exactly. So the warning signs book kind of takes you through everything I wish I would have known before my son was in crisis. And it goes, like I said, it goes with identifying the warning signs and then what to do. Because depending on what's going on with your kid, they don't automatically need to go into treatment center, or they don't automatically need to do that. There's different ways of looking at the different levels of crisis and what to do with that. So we have a lot of different resources, both at mightyparenting.com and at DASIUM.net.
Yes.
Both of those places.
There's lots there. And like you said, you have your podcast, Mighty Parenting. So there's no need to just be in the dark. You can go get all the information. Judy is there.
You can always reach out to me. That's one thing. People call me all the time and just ask me, Judy, what's next? What do I do? What's the first step? This is going on. I am someone that I'm an open book. Mm-hmm. I share what's going on in my life, and I'm happy to help you find the next step. I may not have the solution, but I can help you find a solution.
And we will have all her contact info, including her personal cell phone. Just kidding. You're going to get all these text messages. No, we'll put our website and all of that good stuff in the show notes.
Exactly.
Well, we are doing a little giveaway. So I wanted you to talk about that for 2 listeners. We're giving away 2 self-care packages, which will include some of your books and what else?
It'll include some of my books, and it'll include some different resources that I've used over time to kind of help me find the balance when I don't have it. So there are different things. I think there's a stress relief kit in one of them. And I mean, they're just silly little things that you can use on a daily basis, as well as a couple of books that were instrumental in helping me not only live military life, but just in life in general and in my relationships with the people around me. So we'll give away 2 packets of that.
That will be wonderful. And is it geared more towards parents of kids of a certain age, or any parent?
It's a mixture.
Okay.
It can be anything. I mean, really and truly, the Warning Signs book and Right Side Up are 2 books that have stuff for anybody with kids of any age. And then the other one's the same.
Oh, great. So I will run those on my Instagram. That's where I've been doing all my giveaways. So just come to the MilSpouse Matters Instagram for more details for that. I am so thankful that you came on today, Judy. I feel like I could talk to you for the rest of the day and not exhaust
all the topics, right?
Yeah, it would just, because you're so amazing. So we'll have to have you back on again, maybe this summer or something, for a follow-up. That would be a lot of fun.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure being here. I really appreciate it. And I love, like I said at the beginning, I love what you're doing, and the conversations are just, real.
Aww.
And it's great.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate it. And listeners, don't forget, you can find Judy at the Mighty Parenting Podcast. Find her books called Warning Signs, A Parent's Guide to Discover If Your Teen is at Risk, and Right Side Up, Find Your Way Through Military Life. Go to her website, thedirectiondiva.com. She's on Instagram, Facebook, and her private Facebook group, Mighty Parenting. Just check the show notes at milspousematters.com, and I'll just have an easy link to all of these and all the information we talked about. So did you have anything else to add, Judy?
No.
Okay.
Just take care of yourselves and enjoy this experience, because it really is great.
That's awesome. And thank you again for coming on, and I hope everybody has a great week. I'll talk to you next week.
Connect with Jen at jenmcdonald.net or on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can also purchase her book, You Are Not Alone, Encouragement for the Heart of a Military Spouse, at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and other booksellers. Love the show? Don't forget to leave a review on iTunes. Until next time, have a great week.